A high school student nearly crippled the nation's economy.
He was Canada's most notorious counterfeiter. His notes just exploded across the country.
It wasn't necessarily the money, it was the challenge.
He was a big player. It just mushroomed into so much more.
There was no way we were ever going to get caught. We were untouchable, invincible.
Find out how he did it. Next on Masterminds.
Go!
In the late 1990s, Windsor, Ontario was hit with a flood of extraordinary counterfeit $100 bills.
The bills were perfect. They were passing the counterfeit detection, no problem. That's how good they were.
The forgers had somehow managed to defeat the world's most secure currency.
Canada's pretty much a leader in security features on their notes.
Every aspect of a bill is in some way intended to ensure security.
Printed on non-fluorescent paper, the $100 note is made up of 9 different sections, each designed by individual engravers. Raised ink printing gives it a 3-dimensional quality. The bill also contains extensive microprinting, intricate line patterns and shades, a color-shifting foil applique called the optical security device, and embedded fluorescent planchettes. Even the twin serial numbers employ a highly specialized font.
We really hadn't seen a major counterfeiter before, when it had implications across Canada.
The exceptional forgeries soon became epidemic, spreading to cities throughout the country and inflicting huge losses on businesses.
We started seeing refusal notices go up as a result.
No, we don't think so.
90% retailers would not accept a $100 bill because they perceived that it was just too risky.
Obviously, you want to find out who's manufacturing it so you can stop it. But you can't always judge where the bill's being made by going to the location where they're being passed.
Tracing it back is very difficult unless you get some information and do some old-fashioned legwork. We're looking for anything that we can to identify where they may come from.
Police across the nation launched a major crackdown on known and suspected counterfeiters.
We have people that have been caught passing counterfeit, but the amount that we seized wouldn't point to somebody who was a manufacturer.
As the investigation widened, authorities interviewed paper suppliers about any unusual purchases.
Banknote paper is not standard paper. And it's not really even technically paper, it's a cotton linen blend.
But when suppliers couldn't provide any leads, law enforcement started looking for the high-end presses they assumed must have produced the near-perfect bills.
Most counterfeiting operations are typically done on professional printing equipment.
But again, police drew a blank.
There were only so many suspects around. And no one had that expertise or the knowledge or the equipment.
Then, in early 2000, as authorities hit a dead end, the problem escalated. The entire nation was awash in $16 million in fake hundreds.
You're really attacking a country's economy when you're making counterfeit currency.
Investigators suspected the operation originated across the border with the Detroit mob. But the mastermind behind the greatest counterfeiting operation in Canadian history was the last person police ever imagined.
I had this notion embedded in the back of my head since I was a kid that if you could print money, you would solve all the problems in the world. I woke up one morning and decided I'm going to do the best counterfeit bill anybody's ever seen.
High school student Wesley Weber had found a way to create undetectable counterfeits and literally made himself millions. The question is, how did he do it? Master counterfeiter Wesley Weber was born in 1974, just south of Windsor, Ontario, in a small community called River Canard.
My upbringing was better than most. I was afforded every opportunity growing up. As a young kid, my parents were extremely supportive, nurturing academically, but I was an introvert. I was a shy kid.
When Wesley Weber discovers computers, a whole new world opens up for him.
Computer was my first babysitter. It was the best thing ever invented. I spent more time with my computer than socializing. Through high school, I was a nerd. You know, pimples and glasses and the stereotypes that just make you insecure when you're young. What I had to figure out was a way to change my image.
Weber's need to make his mark leads him to commit a daring act.
The first big criminal thing that he did, he broke into a high school.
My friend and I had black clothes, black hats, all the stereotypes that go along with a Mission Impossible style robbery. We lowered ourselves in through the roof. We cut the power, we did all kinds of extravagant things to minimize our detection. We stole everything. My accomplices' parents were gone to Mexico. We had the whole house as a home base to stash our loot. The newspapers accounted professional burglars from Detroit had come and stole $270,000 worth of equipment. It was our vindication. We foolishly started bragging about what we did because if no one knew what we did, there was no point in doing it.
But Weber's conceit soon brings him to the attention of police.
He seized the equipment. He was arrested and he was charged and he was convicted.
My parents were in shock. They didn't know what to do. Mr. Overachiever is breaking into schools now. I went to jail for a week. It was a terrifying experience.
But Weber also discovers he's finally made his mark.
Went back to find I was the most popular guy in the school. Was feeling that acceptance I had sought after so long.
He's quickly befriended by fellow students Anthony Caporale, Dustin Cossum, and Ryan Hodere.
I drank, did drugs, never went to school, partied with the girls.
Weber moves in with the gang and soon learns how they support themselves.
And they're very involved in criminal activities.
Breaking into cars, taking radios, selling various illicit goods. And Weber finds the lifestyle exciting.
After the gang shows Weber their feeble attempts at check fraud, he demonstrates how to do a better job.
Got some genuine documentation, counterfeited, and put the information he wanted onto it.
The first check I counterfeited was a City of Windsor welfare check. I was pretty proficient at that time because of the graphics experience I had. So I came up with my own methodologies to manipulate the check, to change dates and addresses and account numbers.
His friends respected him because he had skills that they didn't. And if you could counterfeit things for them, then that would increase his standing.
The crew starts cashing his fake checks all over Windsor, but Weber's not satisfied.
And in the back of my head, there was always that thought that, well, why do we go through all this trouble to get money? Maybe we could just print money.
Wesley Weber now sets out to turn this idea into reality.
In 1999, Weber counterfeited his first currency.
Numbers have to be exact. It won't fit.
The first bills, they were substandard. It wasn't a simple process of just putting a bill in a scanner and pressing copy. It's a piece of engineering that's been created by dozens and dozens of people, and it requires extreme digital manipulation to have it come out as a reasonable facsimile. It took months and months and months to refine the process. It became an obsession. I was a perfectionist.
Against Weber's advice, his less discerning roommates insist on putting his substandard fakes to the test.
His buddies go around to retailers with a bunch of 20s and buy some small products, and they would pocket the actual money, and that was their profit.
But Weber wants more than small change.
I had a $100 note. It's the holy grail of the counterfeit world. It wasn't necessarily about the money for me, it was the challenge. There are 9 separate sections on a bill that are developed by individual engravers. I would edit the image adjusting photographic attributes like sharpness, brightness, color, and hues and saturations. And I kept doing this week after week, month after month, to the point where I'd finally printed a front and back template. I started my proofs, printed them, they looked identical.
But they're still not good enough. The bills glow when placed under ultraviolet light, a dead giveaway that they're forgeries.
What you actually need is paper that is not UV responsive.
Posing as a bar owner, Weber now visits a Toronto paper manufacturer and explains his problem.
I walked in and I said, I print advertisements every Friday night with fluorescent lettering. And when I use my standard inkjet paper, the paper glows under my black lights in the bar and the letters glow.
It looked awful and no one could read them.
She said, you need something called archival quality paper. I said, what's that? She said, it's acid-free, it's used in wills and testaments, deeds and ownerships, banknotes, and I mean, that reverberated banknotes, you say.
Weber purchases a batch of the paper, then tackles his next obstacle.
The optical security device was the most challenging. It looked like a shiny chocolate bar wrapper. It looked like a piece of foil. That changes from gold to green.
He would call up foil producers. He would always hold himself out as the CEO of Pro Custom Graphics, which is a company, of course, that did not exist. He would use that as a way into the graphic arts business and the printing business.
Gentleman said, why do you want to get into the printing business? He said, there's no money in this. So I said, no, there's definitely money in this. We obviously had 2 different perspectives.
Determining it's too difficult to apply gold foil to his counterfeits, Weber scours art stores for a way to imitate the feature.
I happened to go to a place called Loomis and Tolles. I said, I need a paint that changes color. Coincidentally, I had just received samples of this new paint. I took it home, put a dab on a bill that I had printed out, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was almost identical. This was one of the hardest embedded security features that I had somehow thwarted with $3. Showed it to Dustin. His mouth almost fell out of his head. He was like, how did you do this? It's impossible.
Armed with the necessary materials, Weber makes a batch of notes and tests them on a vigilant store clerk.
She took each individual bill, curled the ends where the optical security device was to make sure there was a gradient of color that transitioned from gold to green. She took a magic marker out next, used to test the acidity of paper. She placed each bill under the fluorescent light, and the planchettes fluoresced. The last thing she did was pulled out a 10 times magnification glass and passed them as genuine. We left there skipping and jumping. We thought we had won the lottery. Now I was clearly on the other side of the law. I was living my own life, doing things my own way.
Weber and his crew now ramp up operations.
Dustin's job was to apply the planchettes. Ryan's job was to apply the optical security device. Anthony sprayed the entire page with clear coat to seal the ink and provide the depth of color we were looking for.
They're soon printing $20,000 a day.
And we're just a bunch of kids having a good time going out and buying clothes and cases of beer. And now at the social circle that I wanted, I had access to all kinds of things in life that I'd never been exposed to before. It was just a very self-centered lifestyle, but it fed into that feeling of worth and self-esteem and self-confidence. No consideration of consequence, nothing.
But as Weber's fortune grows, so does his greed, and it soon threatens to bring him down. Canadian counterfeiter Wesley Weber now sets out to find a way to move his product across the country.
Weber sought out an individual who was involved in both legitimate and illegitimate businesses. It was someone he'd known for some years and who had expressed interest in his counterfeiting endeavors earlier on.
He said $180,000 tomorrow at 23%. There was no negotiating. We'd never printed that amount in one period of time.
But Weber and his gang rise to the challenge. They work through the night, deliver the counterfeits on time, and score over $40,000 profit. His fence soon places another, larger order.
Now we had unlimited budgets, able to play with advanced software, and we had more efficient products. We were cutting 100,000 at a time with a hydraulic laser paper cutter. And I just kept increasing my level of sophistication. We literally put hundreds of thousands of dollars in the dryer with clay poker chips that would pit the edges of the paper, making it look torn and worn. It took about 11 minutes for $100,000 to run through the dryer. That was the first time tangibly we felt that, holy cow, maybe we could each make $100,000, maybe even each $1 million. And that's when the greed really set in. I spent days shopping, constantly, 20 hours a day. I was a madman.
They can go buy the cars they want. They can go buy the little toys that they want.
The girlfriend wanted a Cherokee. I picked up about $34,000 in real cash, went to the dealership and picked out a Cherokee. There was no way we were ever going to get caught. We ran the world. We felt we were untouchable, invincible.
But the greedier they got, the more sloppy they got. They were being real cavalier.
Weber buys himself a top-of-the-line Mustang Cobra and can't resist loading it up with high-end modifications.
Weber went to London to buy some rims for his Mustang. The guy wanted $3,000 in cash. He said, no problem. But rather than taking the good money to buy the rims, he uses counterfeit money.
After Weber leaves, the dealer notices several of his bills have the same serial number and calls police.
So it starts there with the reporting of the bills. Wesley Weber was not the kind of guy we'd be looking at, but now we're going to look at him real hard.
They put a lot of manpower on this investigation. They put surveillance on Weber and his crew 24 hours a day.
On many occasions, we've seen the police following us. So everybody's life changed at that point. It became very suspicious.
Weber did all sorts of crazy things in order to make it more difficult for the cops to follow him. He drove erratically, he would pull spontaneous U-turns, he would go through lights.
We changed cell phones every 2 months. I had already been to jail once. I didn't want to go back. Jail scared the hell out of me.
But he can't say no when his fence comes calling.
He ordered another 100,000 and another 100,000. But we couldn't print it fast enough. There just wasn't enough time in the day. That greed, that just pushed all of us over the edge.
They knew they were being followed, but they just wouldn't stop.
Hadn't slept in months, literally. I was worn out, just destroyed. Looked like I hadn't eaten in a half a year. People say it's quick money. It wasn't quick money. It was the most arduous time in my life. There was no way to get off the train at that point. Couldn't stop.
Desperate to shake police, Weber and his gang move operations to a new location.
They're trying to keep that location secret from the police, but the police were persistent.
While the mastermind stays a step ahead of the law, his associates aren't so lucky.
Police officers put GPS tracking devices on one of their vehicles.
Law enforcement tracks the crew back to their new hideout and sets up a stakeout right next door.
They had just followed them back from picking up gold paint, and they picked up all kinds of paper for the manufacturing of the bills.
After secretly observing every detail of the operation for weeks, police are ready to strike.
Go! 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 Police!
The bills are pouring out of the printers as the officers are going into the place.
Authorities seize over $250,000 in counterfeit hundreds and enough paper to print millions more.
They were in shock. 2 people with gold paint on their hands. When you catch someone in the act, it doesn't get much better than that.
At the point we were arrested, we had produced approximately $16 million in counterfeit money, saturated the market pretty heavily. Our money was worldwide.
At trial, Ryan Hodare, Dustin Cossum, and Anthony Caporale are each sentenced to 2 years.
I was sentenced as the mastermind to 5 years.
Weber is the biggest counterfeit case in Canadian history.
People will probably never look at the $100 note the same way again.
In fact, it's the Weber bill that is being taught at the police colleges for fraud and counterfeiting. Weber's is the test case.
Yeah, and there should be blue spots all over the bill.
It's pretty rare to see that combination of determination and intelligence, which could have been applied to any number of disciplines. He chose to apply it to criminal activity.
At the time we were printing money, we weren't concerned as to the consequences of what we were doing.
Sooner or later, you're going to jail, and really, at the end of the day, is it worth it?
It's only rewarding until you get caught. And then you have to pay the full price, which is several years of your life.
For us, it was the overpowering feeling that you were in complete control when in fact you had no control. The greed permeates things. There was no way for us to stop. It was our downfall.